The whisper my 10-year-old grandson leaned close, his voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. Dad says he'll take your house when you fly to Hawaii. The words struck harder than any verdict I'd ever delivered. For years, my son-in-law Wesley had lived under my roof, eating my food, smiling across my table. And now he was plotting to steal it all. I cancelled the flight that night. The next morning, my hunt began. A week later, everything turned upside down. Revenge doesn't always come with fire. Sometimes it arrives in silence. Wesley raised his wineglass across the table, grinning like a man celebrating his own victory. To family, he said, and to Orville's grand Hawaiian escape. 2 weeks of beaches and peace. You've earned it after all those years on the bench. I lifted my glass, watching him over the rim. His smile was polished, but it never touched his eyes. And don't worry about the house, Wesley added, leaning back in my chair at my table with an ease that suddenly felt wrong. We'll take care of everything while you're gone. I appreciate that, I said, setting my glass down. My voice was steady, the same tone I used in court when a witness started to lie. Across from me, Celeste, my daughter, laughed a little too loudly at something Wesley hadn't even finished saying. She twisted her napkin like a rope, her eyes fixed somewhere near the salt shaker. Her fingers spun her wedding ring in tight, anxious circles. Tyler, my grandson, poked at his untouched pepperoni pizza, his favorite. Dad, Celeste asked softly, you did set up the mail hold, right? And the plant watering? We can handle all that if you need. I've traveled before, I said. I know the routine. Wesley checked his phone for the third time in 10 minutes, glancing at his watch between scrolls. Celeste lifted her water glass with both hands just to keep it from shaking. Something was wrong. 30 years on the bench had trained me to read people, to see lies form before they left the mouth. My dining room now felt like a courtroom, only I didn't yet know the charge. Tyler, I said gently, you've barely touched your favorite. What's wrong, buddy? His lips parted, but before he could speak, Wesley's head jerked up from his phone. Actually, Celeste interrupted, standing too quickly. Wesley, could you help me get dessert? They disappeared into the kitchen. Their voices were low, urgent. But years of listening in court had sharpened my hearing. Timing. Documents ready. Tomorrow morning, I caught fragments between the clatter of plates. A small hand found mine under the table. Tyler's. Grandpa, he whispered, eyes full of tears. I didn't mean to listen, but Dad told Mom that when you leave, they're taking your house. He said you're too old to stop them. The words landed like a gavel strike. Final. Merciless. My blood turned cold. I had heard thousands of verdicts in my lifetime, but never one that cut this deep. I squeezed Tyler's hand. Everything will be okay, I whispered back. Footsteps approached. I let go, picked up my fork, cut into the slice of pizza I could no longer taste. My face stayed calm, the mask of a man who had faced liars his whole life. Everything all right out here? Wesley asked, his tone almost casual, but his eyes sharp on his son. Tyler's just tired, Celeste said quickly. School starts soon. Moments later, she guided the boy upstairs, her hand firm on his shoulder. Tyler looked back once. Fear and hope mixed in his gaze. Wesley disappeared into the guest room, now his office. I followed at a distance. He grabbed his briefcase, clutching it like evidence he couldn't afford to lose. Enjoy paradise, Orville, he said at the door. When you get back, who knows, maybe we'll have some surprises for you. I'm sure you will, I replied. He left. Their footsteps climbed the stairs to the master suite, the one that had belonged to my late wife and me for 30 years. Now it belonged to them. I stood alone in the dining room. 4 plates, 3 empty glasses, Tyler's uneaten pizza cooling in silence. My family had just betrayed me under my own roof. While eating my food at my table, Wesley thought he'd won. He hadn't. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I sat in my study, the same room where I'd written hundreds of verdicts, Tyler's trembling words echoing in my head. They're taking your house. You're too old to stop them. Maybe Wesley was right about one thing. I was old, but I wasn't helpless. Not yet. At dawn, I called the airline. The woman on the line apologized about the cancellation fee. $1,200 gone. I didn't care. I told her it was a personal emergency. By 8, I was standing in my kitchen, scrambling eggs. When Celeste walked in and saw me there, she froze mid-step. Dad, I thought you'd be at the airport by now. Flight's not until noon, I said casually, keeping my tone even. Wanted one more homemade breakfast. She poured coffee, her hand shaking just enough to make the spoon rattle against the cup. That's nice. 15 minutes later, Wesley appeared. Crisp shirt, perfect tie, expression almost smug. He stopped dead when he saw me. Surprise flickered across his face, then calculation. Running late this morning? He asked lightly. Plenty of time, I said. Want some eggs? He waved a hand. No, big day at the office. You sure you're okay? You look a little pale. Maybe you should see a doctor before you fly. I'm fine, I said. Just needed time to think. Celeste drove Tyler to summer camp at 9. Wesley left 30 minutes later in the BMW I'd co-signed for him. I waited until the house went still. The silence that tells you no one's home. Then headed straight to his office. The briefcase was sitting on his desk. Unlocked. Arrogant. Inside, I found a folder marked Property Transfer. I opened it slowly. The first page was a power of attorney. My name, my signature, except I had never signed it. The forgery was good, too good. The same slant, the same pressure. But the date gave it away. I'd been in Miami that week, presiding over a maritime case. Court transcripts, hotel receipts, all proof. The next document stopped my breath. A sales agreement. My house. Listed at $670,000, I'd had it appraised last year at $800,000. Wesley was selling my home for quick cash. The buyer, Cornerstone Property Solutions, LLC. Closing date, 3 days from now. 3 days. He'd planned to finish the theft before I even returned from Hawaii. I took photos of everything. The forged documents, the escrow notes, Wesley's handwriting in the margins calculating his cut, even the scribbled bank transfer notes. I replaced the papers exactly how I'd found them. Years of courtroom discipline made my hands steady. Back in my study, I reviewed the pictures. It was airtight evidence, enough to bury him. I could have called the police right then. Had him arrested by noon, but no. An arrest would mean lawyers, court delays, loopholes. I'd seen guilty men walk free on technicalities. This needed more than legal justice. It needed balance. He wanted to take everything from me, so I'd take everything from him. I picked up my phone and searched for a notary service. Volkov Notary. Professional, independent, available today. Perfect. My thumb hovered over the call button for a moment. Once I pressed it, there would be no going back. This wasn't a courtroom case anymore. This was personal. I pressed dial. Volkov Notary Services, a voice answered. My name is Orville Wallace, I said evenly. I need to make a sworn statement today, before someone else forges my name again. The notary's office was small, quiet, and smelled faintly of ink and wood polish. A brass plaque read, Richard Volkov, Notary Public. The man himself looked precise, 50-something, neat glasses, and a posture that said nothing slips by me. He listened without interruption as I explained what I needed. You're making a declaration that you've never executed a power of attorney, he asked carefully. That's right, I said. Because someone plans to use one, forged in my name. His polite smile vanished. The professional mask shifted to concern. That's a serious allegation. Have you contacted the authorities? Not yet, I replied. First, I want documentation. Proof that I never signed anything of the kind. He nodded slowly. I'll certify the statement today. Keep multiple copies. I watched him type, print, and press his seal into the paper with a heavy, satisfying thump. It was the first sound of protection. A barrier forming between me and Wesley's lies. If anyone presents a power of attorney under your name, he said, handing me 3 copies, this will prove it's false. That's exactly what I need, I said, tucking them neatly into my briefcase. But a notarized statement wasn't enough. I needed legal teeth. Linda Saunders' office overlooked the waterfront. Calm, clean, efficient. Her walls were lined with estate planning certificates and framed degrees. You mentioned over the phone that you had questions about property rights, she asked, sliding a legal pad closer. My daughter and her husband live with me, I said evenly. They pay no rent and there's no lease. What are my options if I want them out? She didn't even hesitate. Florida law is clear. Without a lease, they're tenants at will. You can terminate their stay with 15 days written notice. If they refuse to leave, you file for eviction. The court will side with you. How long would that take? If uncontested, 3 to 4 weeks. Contested, 6 maybe. I nodded slowly. Weapons in the arsenal. One more thing, I said. What about protecting assets from fraud? Her pen paused mid-note. Is someone trying to defraud you, Mr. Wallace? Possibly. I'm taking preventive measures. Document everything, she said firmly. If you have proof, file a report immediately. Not yet, I said. But soon. When I returned home, the house was silent again. Wesley was at work. Celeste had taken Tyler to the pool. Perfect. I went back to his office. The forged documents were still there, undisturbed, untouched. I took new photographs, this time with my phone's timestamp visible on every shot. Date, time, GPS location, digital proof, undeniable in court. Then I uploaded everything to 3 separate cloud drives, printed copies, sealed them in an envelope, and locked it in my safe. 30 years in the legal system had taught me one thing: paper wins cases. That night, when the house had gone still again, I returned to Wesley's office one last time. In my pocket, a small digital recorder, 16-hour battery, voice activated. I'd ruled on enough wiretap evidence to know exactly where the legal line was. This was my home, my desk, my office. What he said here was fair game. I slid the recorder behind a row of law books, its green LED blinking once before going silent. Tested it. Perfect. I left the office and closed the door behind me. The trap was set. Tomorrow, I'd know what Wesley was really planning. Tonight he still thought I was a tired old man who'd given up. He was wrong. Wesley changed tactics overnight. At breakfast, he sat across from me, cutting into his toast with surgical precision. You ever think about getting a single-story place, Orville? He asked, his tone so casual it almost passed for concern. These stairs are getting steep for you. I looked up from my coffee. I've been climbing them for 15 years. He smiled, polite and patronizing. Sure. But things change. We just want what's best for you. Quality of life, right? The campaign had begun. By lunch, he'd left a brochure on the counter. Maple Grove Assisted Living Communities. Just informational, he said when I picked it up. Some of these places are like resorts. At dinner, Celeste joined in. Dad, we just worry about you being alone in this big house, she said gently. What if something happens? You're here, I reminded her. I'm hardly alone, Wesley sliced his steak. We won't always be. Tyler's growing. We're thinking about getting our own place eventually. And then what? You'll be here all by yourself. I set my fork down. Planning to move out, are you? He shrugged, feigning innocence. Eventually, everyone does. This is a lot of house for one person. I'll manage. Will you, though? His smile tightened. I saw you lifting those boxes in the garage. Looked rough. I wasn't struggling, I said, voice even. You looked unsteady, he pressed. 30 years of courtroom control kept me calm. I appreciate the concern, Wesley, but I'm quite capable of managing my own affairs. Celeste's voice was softer. Dad, we're just trying to plan ahead. Be realistic. Realistic. The word hung heavy. Tyler sat silent, pushing peas around his plate. He couldn't meet my eyes. This conversation is over, I said quietly. They shared a glance, the kind that says, we're not done here. Later, I passed the living room. They were whispering, laptop open, blue glow flickering across their faces. Real estate listings. Condos, 55-plus communities. They were already choosing my next home. At midnight, when the house was dark, I retrieved the recorder from behind the law books and plugged it into my computer. One file, 30 minutes long. It started while we'd been eating dinner. Wesley's voice came through crisp and clear. The POA's dated wrong. He postponed the whole trip. Then silence. Another man's voice faint in the background. I know, Mark. I know, Wesley said, agitated. But we're out of time. The second mortgage payment's due in 10 days. $85,000. What choice do I have? Either we move forward or I lose everything. I froze. Second mortgage? On my house. I'd never authorize that. The recording continued. Plan B, Wesley said. Get him declared incompetent. If we can prove he's not fit to handle his affairs, we can file for guardianship. It's not hard. Missed meds, memory issues, confusion. We'll document everything. Build a case. 3 months tops. Mark's muffled reply was followed by Wesley again. Then we'll have legal power of attorney. Sell the house, pay off the debts. He'll be taken care of. Everyone wins. Everyone except me. I sat back, my chest tight. They weren't just planning theft. They were planning erasure. Institutionalize me. Take my home. Strip me of dignity and call it compassion. I saved the file in 3 places. Computer, cloud, flash drive. Indestructible evidence. Morning couldn't come fast enough. Wesley thought I was too old to fight back. He was about to learn what 30 years of watching liars unravel had taught me: patience and precision. Morning light crept through the blinds, pale and steady. I hadn't slept. The recording still echoed in my mind. Get him declared incompetent. Sell the house. Everyone wins. Everyone except me. I'd planned to serve eviction papers that day. 15 days, then they'd be gone. But the recording changed everything. Wesley was desperate, drowning in an $85,000 debt I'd never signed for. Desperate people make mistakes. They reach too far, trust too easily, and leave trails. So I decided to let him. At 9:30, I placed my bank statement on the coffee table in plain sight. Navy blue header, balance clear as day. $450,000. I positioned it like bait in a cage trap, then went to pour myself a cup of coffee. 2 minutes later, I heard footsteps. Wesley entered the room, phone in hand. He stopped when he saw the document. He leaned forward, his breath hitched. A second later, click. He snapped a photo. I counted to 5 before stepping into view, mug in hand. Morning, Wesley. He jumped slightly, masking it with a smile. Oh, morning, Orville. Beautiful day, huh? Indeed. I gathered the papers as if I hadn't noticed. Didn't mean to leave these out. No problem. His tone had shifted, friendly, almost giddy. You seem relaxed today. Sleep well? Well enough, I said. You? Great, actually I was thinking, maybe I overstepped yesterday. Family stuff, you know? We're good, right? I sipped my coffee. Yesterday he'd been circling like a vulture. Now he was playing the doting son-in-law. We're fine, I said smoothly. I appreciate your concern, he grinned, too quickly. Glad to hear it. The shark had smelled blood in the water, and he thought it was mine. That afternoon, I found him in the living room scrolling through property listings on his tablet. I've been thinking about my finances, I said, pretending to sound uncertain. Money sitting idle loses value. Maybe I should invest. Real estate, maybe. He almost dropped the tablet. That's actually a great idea. Real estate's strong right now. Rental properties, flips. I could help you find something solid. I don't know much about investments. That's why I'm here. He leaned forward, enthusiasm radiating off him. I do this all the time. Let me show you a few options. He swiped through listings. Gulfport, Largo, Clearwater. Here, he said, tapping a photo. 3-bedroom, low taxes, solid rental market. Or this duplex. Double income. Perfect for someone like you. These seem expensive, I murmured. That's what it takes to make real money. But with $450 to work with, he caught himself. I mean, depending on your budget, of course. I nodded, keeping my expression mild. Maybe I'll run it by my financial advisor first. A flicker of panic flashed in his eyes before the salesman's smile returned. Sure, of course. But advisors charge a fortune for what I already know. And honestly, Orville, good properties move fast. You wait too long, you miss them. Maybe I'll think about it. Just a look, that's all I'm asking. No commitment. I let the hesitation show, then gave a small nod. All right, show me what you have in mind. He lit up like a man who'd just been handed salvation. At 3 o'clock, I walked into the Pinellas County Prosecutor's office. 7th floor, polished glass, the faint hum of government efficiency. Assistant District Attorney Maria Chen studied the evidence I laid before her. The forged power of attorney, the sales agreement, and my typed timeline. Every detail in perfect legal format. She turned the pages slowly. Mr. Wallace, this is textbook fraud. Identity theft, forgery, attempted theft of assets. We can arrest him today. Not yet, I said. She looked up, surprised. Why not? He's not alone. There's a partner, a man named Mark, maybe others. If you move now, they scatter. You'll get one conviction, maybe none. Give me 2 weeks. I'll bring you the whole conspiracy. Chen leaned back, tapping her pen. 2 weeks is a risk. If he tries anything before then, you'll be the first to know. But he won't. I'm controlling the game now. She studied me for a long moment. You used to be a judge, didn't you? 30 years, I said. It shows. She smiled faintly, logging the evidence into a case file. 2 weeks, Judge Wallace. But I want updates. You'll have them. 3 days later, Wesley was vibrating with energy. Every morning, he brought up real estate markets casually. Every afternoon, he hovered nearby, pretending to check emails while waiting for me to mention the money. Every night, I heard him pacing in his office, whispering into his phone. Urgent, excited, desperate. He thought he was reeling me in, But I was the one holding the line. On the third morning, I gave him what he wanted. "Wesley," I said over breakfast, "let's go see those properties you mentioned." His fork clattered against his plate. "Seriously, that's fantastic. I've already narrowed it down to 3 excellent options." "Then let's not waste time," I said. "Perfect," he said, almost breathless. "I'll grab my keys." The first property sat on a quiet street in Seminole, a small ranch-style home, yard overgrown, paint peeling in strips like old wallpaper. Wesley's voice turned slick and professional. "This one's a steal," he said. "Foreclosure. With some cosmetic work, you could rent it out easy, maybe $1,800 a month." I walked the perimeter slowly. A foreclosure notice flapped on the door. "When does the legal hold clear?" I asked. He hesitated, scratching his neck. "Legal hold. Foreclosed properties can't sell until the bank finalizes title clearance," I said evenly. "Usually takes months." "Right," he stammered. "But my contact at the bank can't override county procedures," I finished for him. He smiled weakly. "Sure, of course." I took a photo of the notice anyway. The second house was in Clearwater, larger, freshly painted, deceptively clean. "Estate sale," Wesley explained. "The owner passed away. Family wants a fast closing." While he talked, I pulled up county property records on my phone. The estate's probate process hadn't even started. No certificate of administration filed. I looked up. "This can't sell until probate clears. You know that, right?" "That's just paperwork," he said, his smile faltering. "Paperwork that makes or breaks ownership," I said. "You can't sell what the seller doesn't legally own yet." His jaw tightened. "You're being very technical about this." "I'm being careful with $400,000, I replied calmly. "Of course," he muttered, turning away. The third house was the prize. St. Pete Beach, 2 stories, new kitchen, sunlit windows. "Curb appeal. This," Wesley said, his voice glowing with confidence, "is the one. Market value, clean title, immediate availability." I walked through each room, noting the water stains under fresh paint, the soft spots on the floor, the dated fixtures under new bulbs. "Who's the seller?" I asked. He smiled. "Private owner, Mark Parker. He's relocating for work. Needs a quick sale. Mark, the name from the recording." Wesley's partner in fraud, I forced a nod. "I'd like to see comparable sales." He pulled up his tablet. "Here, see? 3-bedroom homes nearby sold between $350 and $400. I studied the numbers. They were real. But the houses were newer, larger, and recently renovated. This one wasn't worth more than $280, maybe $290 on a good day. They were trying to sell me my own downfall with a $100,000 markup." "The price feels high," I said, feigning hesitation. "Not at all," he replied. "This market's hot. If we wait, someone else will grab it." Classic pressure tactic. I'd heard it in courtrooms for decades, the language of hustlers. "I'm interested," I said, careful and slow, "but with conditions." He brightened instantly. "Name them." "Everything goes through my notary, Richard Volkoff, and my attorney, Linda Saunders. They review all documents before I sign." His smile froze. "That's pretty unusual for a simple purchase." "It's $400,000, I said flatly. "Unusual is fine." "Attorneys and notaries slow things down. Add fees," he tried again. "I don't care about fees or time," I said. "Those are my terms." Silence. His hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles whitening. "The seller's expecting a quick, clean deal," he said finally. "Then he can find another buyer." His phone buzzed. A message. He glanced at it quickly, tension flickering across his face. "Mark, no doubt. Let me talk to him," Wesley said at last. "Your notary, your lawyer, I'll explain." "Good," I said. "I'll have them ready tomorrow." He nodded stiffly. "Fine." As we drove away, I glanced in the side mirror at the house fading behind us. The false dream home. The bait he'd dangled so confidently. He'd just agreed to put the entire deal under the scrutiny of 2 legal professionals and a certified notary. Desperation made people reckless, and greed made them stupid. The trap had teeth now. It was time to close it. The next morning, I drove back to Central Avenue. First stop, Richard Volkoff, Notary Public. His office was quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies truth. He adjusted his glasses as I handed him the property documents Wesley had shown me. "Would you mind checking ownership records on this?" I asked. He examined the listing, flipping pages slowly, his brow tightening. Then his eyes snapped up. "Mr. Wallace," he said, voice suddenly firm. This property isn't owned by the seller listed here. It's under Sunset Properties LLC. Can you see who owns that LLC? He tapped at his computer, the screen reflecting in his lenses. Yes, and here's something interesting. He turned the monitor toward me. Your son-in-law, Wesley Parker, is listed as a 15% member through a subsidiary holding. So, Wesley hadn't just tried to sell me a house. He was trying to sell me his house, the same scheme, dressed in another suit. That's criminal fraud, Volkov said quietly. Undisclosed ownership interest, falsified representation. It's a felony. Would you mind documenting that formally? I asked. I'll notarize a full statement today, he said. And Mr. Wallace? He won't talk his way out of this. Next stop, Linda Saunders' office. I laid the property packet on her desk. Sales agreement, ownership records, comparable listings, and Volkov's notary report. She reviewed everything in silence, then shook her head. This isn't just unethical, she said finally. It's outright illegal. The markup alone is evidence of conspiracy. And since he has a hidden ownership stake, it's fraud, wire fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. Multiple felonies. Can you document that in writing? By the end of the day, she said, already pulling out her letterhead. And Orval, I'm obligated to report this to the State Real Estate Commission. Wesley will lose his license before the week's over. Good, I said. That'll make what comes next easier. Back home, I went straight to my study. On my desk, I arranged everything in precise order, just like I'd done 1,000 times in court. The forged power of attorney, the fake sales documents, the recording of Wesley's confession, the ownership proof showing his stake in the scam. 2. Professional legal opinions, my notarized statement, a complete case, file, prosecutable, indisputable, devastating. Tyler was spending the night at a friend's house. I'd arranged that. He didn't need to witness what was coming. At 6 o'clock, I called a family meeting. Wesley and Celeste entered the dining room to find me seated at the head of the table, the same seat where this had all begun. Only now, the table held nothing but 2 folders and a single eviction notice. Sit down, I said. Celeste hesitated. Dad, what's... Sit, I repeated, voice cold, judicial. Wesley sat, eyes narrowing. What's this about? Eat your crimes, I said. Celeste blinked. Crimes? I slid the first document across the table. Recognize this? He glanced down. The forged power of attorney. My signature staring back at him. He opened his mouth. I can explain. Don't, I cut in. I laid the second set of papers before him. This is the property you tried to sell me, for 100,000 above market value, a property you secretly own. That's just business, he said, voice rising. Is it? I asked, pressing play on my phone. His own voice filled the room. Get him declared incompetent. We'll take guardianship. Sell the house. Everyone wins. Celeste's hands flew to her mouth. Wesley? He went pale. That recording's illegal. It was in my home, I said calmly. My desk, perfectly legal. I slid the attorney statements across next. Notarized, signed, sealed. Forgery, fraud, conspiracy, wire fraud. You'll be lucky if they stop at 10 years. Celeste's voice cracked. Dad, please, you'll speak when I'm finished. She went silent. You have 2 options, I said. First, I take all of this to the police. You're both charged, tried, convicted. I tapped the folder. 5 years minimum for forgery, more for fraud. Second, you sign a release of all claims to my property. You have 15 days to vacate my house permanently. No contact, no appeals. I placed the eviction notice between them. Choose. Wesley shot to his feet, chair crashing behind him. You can't do this. This is our home. This was my home long before you ever stepped into it. He leaned over the table, face red. You'll regret this. I'll drag you through every court in the state. I didn't move. Are you finished? He froze, recognizing the tone, the same voice that once silenced entire courtrooms. Celeste reached across the table, tears streaming. Dad, please, don't destroy our family. We can fix this. Wesley made mistakes, but family doesn't forge signatures, I said. Family doesn't plan nursing homes and fake incompetence. You chose your side. She withdrew her hand, sobbing quietly. Wesley slumped into his chair, staring at the papers like they might vanish. I stood. 15 days. Then I filed both eviction and criminal charges. At the door I paused. And for the record, the prosecutor already has copies of everything. I filed them 4 days ago. The only reason you're not in handcuffs is because I asked them to wait. Their silence followed me down the hall. Behind me came Celeste's sobbing, Wesley's muffled curses, the crash of glass against the wall. Let them rage. In 15 days they'd be gone, or so I thought, because Wesley wasn't done yet, and by morning I'd learned just how far desperation can push a man. The next morning was too quiet. No arguments, no slammed doors, no whispers behind walls, just the kind of silence that feels staged. At breakfast, Celeste sat rigid, stirring her coffee long after the sugar had dissolved. Wesley, across from her, read the paper without turning a page. Something was brewing. At noon, the doorbell rang. A woman stood outside, clipboard in hand. Orville Wallace? Yes, she smiled professionally. You've been served. She handed me a thick envelope, embossed with the county seal. Have a good day, sir. Inside was a petition. Emergency determination of incapacity, filed by Wesley Parker and Celeste Wallace Parker. They were asking the court to declare me mentally unfit, to place me under guardianship for my own protection. For a moment my hands actually trembled, not from fear, from fury. So this was their final card. When manipulation failed, when forgery failed, they decided to destroy my name instead. I called Linda Saunders immediately. They actually filed it, she said, skimming the emailed pages. That's bold, given the evidence you have against them. Can they win? I asked. No, she said. But they can delay. Competency hearings take time. While this is pending, your eviction and fraud complaints could be questioned. They're trying to muddy the waters. What do I do? Attend the psychiatric evaluation, she said. Answer everything honestly. Let your results speak for themselves. Then we'll dismantle them in court. That evening, I heard Wesley's voice drifting through the kitchen window, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. He's been acting strange lately. Paranoid, confused. It's sad, really. A few days later, one of those neighbors stopped me at the mailbox. Orville, she said gently. I heard you've been having some difficulties. If you ever need help, I smiled tightly. Wesley's facing criminal fraud charges. Consider the source. Her eyes flickered with doubt anyway. He'd planted the seed. For a week, they turned my home into a stage. Late-night music, forced whispers about his memory slipping. Celeste loudly asking, should we hide the car keys, just in case he gets lost? They were poisoning the air with rumors, slowly, deliberately. Even Tyler became a weapon. They coached him to act worried around me, to ask, Grandpa, are you okay? In front of guests. I documented everything, audio, photos, timestamps, evidence of their campaign. The psychiatric evaluation came on the 5th day. Dr. Patricia Morrison, brisk, clinical, unimpressed by my title. 2 hours of memory drills, logic puzzles, questions designed to find cracks in the mind. When she was done, she folded her hands. Mr. Wallace, she said, your cognitive scores are exceptional. Frankly, better than mine before my morning coffee. You'll state that in your report. I asked. Of course, but the court will still require a hearing. Naturally, bureaucracy loved to drag its feet, even while reputations bled. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. 2 more weeks of living in siege inside my own house. Every sound at night made me sit up. Every footstep felt like surveillance. I looked older each morning. Shadows under my eyes, lines carved deeper. Wesley noticed. He smiled over coffee. You should rest, Orville. You're starting to look unstable. I walked away in silence, documenting the remark in my journal. By the night before the hearing, my study looked like a war room. Files stacked neatly, forged documents, recordings, financial statements, psychological evaluations. Every piece of evidence organized by date and relevance. If Wesley thought this was about money now, he was wrong. This was about truth. And in court, truth is the only weapon I ever mastered. Tomorrow, he'd walk into that courtroom expecting an old man's confusion. He'd find something else entirely. A judge who'd spent 30 years watching men like him hang themselves with their own lies. The morning of the hearing felt like every trial I'd ever presided over. That thick silence before the storm. I dressed carefully. Dark suit, polished shoes, crisp shirt. Every detail mattered. Appearance was armor, and I intended to walk into battle fully armed. At 7:30, I left the house without a word. Wesley and Celeste were still upstairs. I didn't want to see them. The drive to the courthouse was calm, quiet. I'd walked these halls 100 times, but never as the one on trial. Linda Saunders waited for me at the entrance, a neat folder tucked under her arm. "Ready?" she asked. I gave a faint smile. "I've been ready for 30 years. The courtroom gleamed, polished benches, oak panels, the Florida state seal shining under the lights. Judge Margaret Brennan presiding. We'd served together once, years ago. She was sharp, fair, incorruptible." Wesley sat at the petitioner's table beside his lawyer, Burton Hayes, all slick confidence and empty charm. Celeste sat in the gallery, pale and shaking. Tyler wasn't there. "Thank God. Court is now in session," Brennan said. "This is the matter of Parker versus Wallace, petition for guardianship." Hayes stood, voice full of fake concern. "Your Honor, we're here because Mr. Wallace, a retired judge, has exhibited clear signs of cognitive decline, erratic behavior, paranoid accusations, hostility toward family attempting to help him." He gestured toward Wesley. "My client only wishes to ensure his father-in-law's safety." I could almost admire the performance, the sincerity in his tone, the polished pity in his eyes. Judge Brennan looked unimpressed. "Proceed." Wesley took the stand. "Orville's been confused lately," he said, his voice soft, almost mournful. "He forgets things, misplaces papers, accuses us of terrible things we'd never do. We're just trying to protect him." Hayes displayed photos, the house looking slightly cluttered, a few papers scattered, the image of neglect they'd carefully staged. "Your Honor," Hayes said, "we ask for a simple guardianship. This is about compassion, not control." Judge Brennan leaned back, arms crossed. "You're asking me to declare a man who served this state's courts for 3 decades incompetent. I hope you have something more than photographs." Hayes smiled. "We do. Behavioral witnesses, emotional instability, or a man responding appropriately to betrayal." Brennan interrupted coolly. "Let's see the defense evidence." Linda rose gracefully. "Your Honor, we submit 3 independent psychiatric evaluations." She handed them up. Brennan scanned the reports. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Excellent cognitive scores," she said aloud. "No signs of dementia or delusion. Emotional reasoning intact." She looked directly at Wesley. "That's inconvenient for your case." Hayes adjusted his tie. "These doctors saw him briefly." I stood. "Your Honor, may I speak?" Brennan nodded. "You may." I walked slowly to the witness stand. The same floor I'd once ruled from now creaked beneath my shoes. "Your Honor," I began, "the accusations they've made, confusion, paranoia, instability, all stem from one fact. I accuse my son-in-law of forgery. I'd like to show you why." Linda placed a folder in my hand. I opened it and laid the first document before the judge. A forged power of attorney. My signature, but not my hand. Brennan examined it, eyes narrowing. "You're saying this is fake?" "I'm stating it," I said, "and I have 3 handwriting experts ready to testify to that." I laid out the next document, the fraudulent property sale. "This," I continued, "is my home, listed under a forged agreement 3 days before my supposed vacation. The buyer was a shell company. My son-in-law arranged it." Brennan's gaze sharpened. Then I pulled out my phone. "Finally, Your Honor, I'd like you to hear this." I pressed play. Wesley's voice filled the courtroom. "Get him declared incompetent. Nursing home, 3 months tops. We'll have full power of attorney. Sell the house, pay the debts. Everyone wins." A murmur rippled through the room. Hayes jumped to his feet. "Objection." "Overruled," Brennan said, her tone like iron. "Continue, Judge Wallace." "Those paranoid accusations," I said evenly, "were accurate. This petition isn't about my well-being. It's retaliation for getting caught." Brennan looked toward the prosecution's bench. "Is the state present?" A woman stood. "Assistant District Attorney Maria Chen, Your Honor. The state has an open fraud investigation. We're ready to file charges today." The air in the courtroom shifted. A sudden gravity, like the moment before a verdict drops. Hayes tried to recover. "Your Honor, this is irrelevant to competency." "On the contrary," Brennan said sharply. "It explains motive." I wasn't done. "Your Honor," I said, "that 450,000 Wesley believed I had. It included 180,000 from my daughter's inheritance, money I held in trust for her. Wesley withdrew it without her knowledge. Lost it in cryptocurrency investments." Celeste's head snapped up. "What?" Her voice cracked, breaking the silence. I handed Brennan the trust records. He forged transfer authorization in her name. Celeste stood, trembling. Wesley, tell me that's not true. He stared straight ahead. Wesley, she screamed, tears streaking down her cheeks. You stole my grandmother's money? He opened his mouth, but no sound came. Brennan's tone dropped, calm and deadly. Bailiff, please escort Mrs. Parker outside. Celeste stumbled out, sobbing, her cries echoing even after the doors shut. Wesley sat motionless, hollow, as if every lie had just turned to stone around him. 30 minutes later, we reconvened. Celeste didn't return. Even Wesley's lawyer had shifted slightly away from him. Judge Brennan entered, her expression grave. Having reviewed all presented evidence, she said, this court finds no basis whatsoever to question Judge Wallace's competency. She looked directly at Wesley. However, I do find substantial evidence that this petition was filed in bad faith to obstruct justice and conceal criminal activity. She turned to the prosecutor. Ms. Chen, Maria Chen stood. The state is prepared to proceed. Then proceed, Brennan said. Chen faced Wesley. Wesley Parker, you're under arrest for forgery, fraud, and identity theft. 2 officers stepped forward. Wesley didn't resist. He simply stood, eyes blank, and held out his wrists. The cuffs clicked quietly, final metallic punctuation to his downfall. As they led him away, he looked at me once. A hollow stare. No hatred. No remorse. Just emptiness. Justice had been served, but victory never feels sweet when it's family. Outside the courthouse, Celeste waited by my car, her face red and swollen from crying. Dad, she whispered. I met her eyes. Did you know about the inheritance? No, she said quickly. He told me it was a business deal. I didn't realize. Her voice broke. That's not true. I did realize. I just didn't want to believe it. I sighed. You made your choice, she nodded slowly. And it was the wrong one. I'm filing for divorce. I'll testify against him if the prosecutor needs me to. That's a start, I said quietly. She hesitated. Can we fix this someday? I looked at her. My only child, now a stranger in many ways. Eventually, I said, but not now. She nodded, tears falling again. Tyler stays with you? For now. When you're stable, we'll talk about visits. She didn't argue. She just turned away, shoulders shaking, and walked into the wind. 3 weeks passed before the house finally felt like mine again. Wesley's trial date was set for October. Fraud, forgery, identity theft. The prosecutor had enough evidence to bury him for years. His lawyer was already negotiating a plea deal. 5 to 7, maybe more. Celeste filed for divorce. She visited once a week, supervised at first. Tyler stayed with me. We turned Wesley's old office into his bedroom, painted the walls ocean blue, bought him a new desk, a model airplane set. No trace of his father remained. He was quiet at first, careful with his words. Healing takes time, especially for a child who's seen adults tear truth apart. By August, the Florida air hung heavy with salt. I rebooked my Hawaii trip. This time, 2 tickets. When I told Tyler, his eyes widened. You're sure you want to take me, Grandpa? I'm sure, I said, folding shirts into my suitcase. After everything we've been through, I think we both deserve a vacation. He grinned. Mum says she's sorry. I know she is, I said softly. Are you going to forgive her? I paused, staring at the window, sunlight spilling across the room. Someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean things go back to how they were. He thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. Is that okay? Yes, I said. Different isn't always bad. Sometimes it's just honest. That night, I sat on the terrace, watching the horizon fade to gold. Tyler was inside, checking his suitcase for the 3rd time. The house behind me was silent. Not empty, just peaceful. I had everything I'd fought for. My home, my freedom, my grandson's safety. Justice had been served, cleanly, legally, completely, but the cost lingered. Family fractured, trust shattered. Some victories don't feel like winning. Still, as I watched the sun dip into the sea, I realized justice isn't about feeling good. It's about balance. It stops the bleeding, even if the scar stays, and sometimes that's enough. The next morning, I loaded our luggage into the car. Tyler was already buckled in, nose buried in the guidebook I'd bought him. As we pulled out of the driveway, I looked once at the house. Solid, silent, standing tall. Mine again. I'd spent 30 years watching verdicts delivered in other people's lives. This was the first time I'd had to fight for my own, and I'd learned something the bench never taught me. Kindness without boundaries invites betrayal. Trust without proof invites loss, and sometimes the people you end up saving aren't the ones you expected to lose. Think they've got good pizza in Hawaii? Tyler asked, eyes bright. I smiled. Better than pepperoni and mushroom, I hope. He laughed, pure and unscarred. The sound of a second chance. As we turned onto the highway, the house grew smaller in the rearview mirror, fading into memory. Ahead lay the open road, the ocean, and a boy who had told me the truth when I needed it most. And that truth, that single act of courage, was victory enough. Some fights aren't about revenge. They're about reclaiming your peace. What would you do if someone tried to take everything you built? Tell us in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe, because more tales of truth and consequence are coming soon.